"I want a baby," said the Apache woman. She knocked on the lonely cowboy's door. Eli Harper lived alone on his small ranch in the wide-open desert of Arizona, the kind of place where the wind whistled through the canyons. The sun painted the skies in gold and red every evening, and the nights were so quiet that even the hoot of an owl sounded like a shout. He had lived there for years, mostly by himself, except for the horses, the few cows he raised, and the occasional visitor who passed by on the dusty trail. He liked it that way. Life was simple, predictable, and peaceful. Eli found comfort in his routine, waking up at sunrise, feeding the animals, repairing fences, and sitting on the porch at night with a cup of strong coffee, watching the stars appear one by one. But that afternoon was different. Eli had been fixing a broken fence near the edge of the property when he noticed the shadows stretching longer than usual. The sun was sinking slowly behind the distant mountains, and the air carried a coolness that hinted at winter. As he wiped the sweat from his brow, he heard the faintest knock at the door of his small wooden house. At first, he thought it was one of the neighbors coming to borrow tools, but living out here, most people were miles away. A knock at this hour, he thought, was unusual. Curious and cautious, Eli walked up the steps and opened the door. Standing there was a young woman he had never seen before. She had dark, expressive eyes that seemed to hold a story, and her hair was long, black, and braided neatly. She wore a simple dress, slightly worn but clean, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made Eli pause. "I want a baby," she said. Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with the strange kind of honesty that made him stop in his tracks. Eli blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. He had been through many quiet days and lonely nights, but nothing like this had ever happened to him before. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come out. He wasn't sure what to say, and for a moment all he could do was look at her. The woman smiled faintly, as if she expected his surprise. "I know it sounds sudden," she continued, "but I've come here for a reason. I need your help." Who was she? How did she even know about him? And why would she think he could help her? Despite his confusion, there was something about her presence that felt genuine. She didn't seem to be joking, and there was no hint of malice in her eyes, just honesty and a quiet hope. He finally found his voice. I don't understand. What do you mean?" "I want to have a child," she said simply, her gaze steady. "I've thought about it for a long time. I don't have anyone else to turn to, and I heard you are a good, kind man. You live simply, but you have a strong heart. I think you could help me." Eli scratched his head, unsure what to say next. He had never been asked for anything like this in his life. He had always kept to himself, never imagining that anyone would knock on his door with such a request. But there was something in the way she spoke, so calm, so certain, that made him want to hear more. "Come inside," he said finally, stepping aside. "We can sit and talk." The woman stepped into the house, her boots leaving faint marks on the wooden floor. She moved with a grace that made the small room feel less empty, as if her presence filled a space that Eli hadn't realized was lonely. She carried no luggage, no belongings except a small bag at her side, which she placed gently on the table. "I'm Mariah," she said, offering her hand. Eli shook it, noticing the firmness in her grip, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her. "Ah, I'm Eli," he replied, still trying to make sense of the situation. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Tell me everything." Mariah sat down and took a deep breath. "I grew up on the reservation not far from here," she began. "Life was complicated. My family wasn't able to provide the kind of love and support I wanted, and I've always dreamed of having a child, of creating a family of my own. I thought I could do it alone, but I can't, and I don't want to wait any longer." Eli listened, feeling a mix of surprise and curiosity. Her story was simple but touched something deep inside him, a sense of empathy he didn't often allow himself to feel. He was used to dealing with animals, fixing fences, and managing the land. People's lives, their problems, usually felt distant and separate. But here was Mariah, standing at his door, trusting him enough to share her deepest desire. "I don't know if I can help you," Eli said honestly. "This, it's not something I ever expected in my life. I've lived alone for a long time. I don't know anything about this." Mariah nodded, her expression understanding. "I know it's unusual. I know it's sudden. I'm not asking you to decide right now. I just I just needed to be honest and tell you my truth. If you want to say no, I'll understand. But I couldn't leave without telling you." There was a long silence. Eli felt the weight of the moment. The sun outside had nearly disappeared, casting long shadows across the room. He realized that this was more than just a surprise visit. This was a turning point for both of them. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Why come all this way and ask me?" Mariah looked down at her hands for a moment before meeting his eyes again. "Because you live a good life," she said quietly. "I've heard stories about you, about how you care for your animals, how you live with honesty and integrity. I need someone who can be responsible, someone who can help me bring a child into the world safely. I don't know anyone else I can trust." Eli felt a strange warmth spread through him. No one had ever said anything like that about him before. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, just a man who lived alone on a ranch. But hearing her words, it made him pause and think about what it meant to be needed, to be trusted in such an important way. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "I can't promise anything, but I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Just think about it." As she stood to leave, Eli noticed the way she carried herself, calm, unafraid, and filled with purpose. She wasn't just asking for help. She was showing him a glimpse of a life he had never considered, one that included connection, trust, and responsibility beyond himself. Before she stepped out the door, she looked back and said, "Thank you for listening, Eli. That means more than you know." Eli watched her walk down the dusty path, her figure silhouetted against the fading sunlight. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of curiosity and something more, a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. The quiet life he had cherished suddenly seemed smaller somehow. Maybe it was time for something different. Maybe it was time to open his life to someone else, even in the most unexpected way. He closed the door slowly, leaning against it and staring out at the desert. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and earth. For the first time in a long time, Eli felt that life might be about to change, and deep down he wondered if he was ready for it. Ellie couldn't stop thinking about Mariah after that evening. Her words, simple and direct, seemed to echo in his mind long after she had disappeared down the dusty trail. He went about his usual chores the next morning, feeding the horses, checking the fences, and gathering firewood. But even as he worked, his thoughts kept returning to her. There was something in her eyes, something in the way she had spoken, that made him feel a mixture of curiosity and responsibility he hadn't experienced in years. By late morning, he found himself sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, staring at the horizon. The desert looked calm, the mountains in the distance hazy in the early light. Usually these quiet moments brought him peace, but today he felt restless. Eli realized that Mariah's request had stirred something inside him he didn't fully understand. It wasn't just the idea of helping someone. It was the trust she had placed in him. He remembered the way she had looked at him, her voice steady and calm. "I want a baby," she had said. At first it sounded like a strange, impossible idea. But now the words felt less shocking and more sincere. Eli wondered what had driven her to come all this way, to knock on his door and speak so openly about her deepest desire. He didn't know if he could help her, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he should at least try to understand her world. Later that morning, Eli decided to go into town. The small town near his ranch was nothing like the wide-open spaces he was used to. It had a few stores, a general post office, and a small clinic. The streets were quiet, filled mostly with people running errands or visiting neighbors. Eli wasn't a man who liked crowds, but today he felt drawn to talk to anyone who might give him advice. At the local cafe, he ran into Sarah, a kind woman who worked at the general store. She had known Eli for years and had always been a good listener. Over coffee, he hesitated, unsure how to begin. But finally, he spoke. "A woman came to my ranch yesterday," he said slowly. She wants a baby. She asked me for help." Sarah raised her eyebrows, surprised. "A woman? On your ranch? That's unusual, Eli. Are you saying she?" "I don't know," Eli interrupted. "I don't know what to say." She seemed sincere. "She's not asking for charity or anything like that. She just wants someone she can trust, someone responsible. She thinks I can help." Sarah leaned back in her chair, considering. "Ellie, I don't know the full story, but it sounds like she trusts you. And that's not something people do lightly."
You're a good man, and you live a steady life. Maybe she sees that."
Eli nodded, but he still felt unsure. He had never been responsible for anyone except himself and the animals on his ranch. The thought of helping someone bring a child into the world was frightening, even if he wanted to help. "I just don't know if I can do it," he admitted.
"I've never done anything like this before." "You don't have to decide right away," Sarah said gently.
Listen to her, understand her story, and then see what feels right. Sometimes the right thing isn't obvious at first, but it becomes clearer when you take the time to understand. Eli finished his coffee, thanked Sarah, and left the cafe. On the way back to the ranch, he thought about what she had said. Maybe he didn't need to have all the answers right now. Maybe the first step was just understanding Mariah, her life, her challenges, and why she had come to him in the first place. When he arrived back at the ranch, he found that Mariah had returned. She was sitting near the fence, her small bag beside her, feeding a few chickens she had found wandering nearby. She looked up as he approached, her face lighting with a gentle smile. "I thought I'd come back," she said. "I didn't want to leave things unfinished yesterday. I wanted to answer any questions you might have." Eli hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I have questions, yes, but I want to understand why you chose me, why you came here. Can you tell me more about yourself?" Mariah nodded, setting the small bowl of feed down. "I grew up on the reservation," she began, her voice soft but clear. "Life there is beautiful in some ways, but it's also hard. My family, they weren't able to give me the kind of stability I needed. I wanted a child, someone to love and care for, to create the family I never had. I tried to do it alone, but it's not enough. I realized I needed someone I could trust, someone steady, who could help me bring a child safely into the world." He could see the honesty in her eyes. She wasn't asking for anything selfish, She wasn't demanding anything. She was simply being truthful about her life and her dreams. And he realized that her courage, the way she had walked into his home and spoken so openly, was remarkable. "Why me?" he asked again softly. "Why come all this way?" "I had heard about you. People speak well of you in town, about how you care for your land, your animals, and the life you live. You have a quiet strength. You live honestly. I thought, if there's anyone who could be trusted, it would be you. I didn't want someone who would be careless or unkind. I wanted someone responsible, someone steady. That's why I came to you." Eli felt a strange warmth in his chest. No one had ever said anything like that about him before. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, a man living a quiet life. But now, for the first time, he felt seen, not just as a rancher, but as a person capable of helping someone in a profound way. I need time to think," he said honestly. It's a big thing. I've never done anything like this before, and I don't know what it involves fully. I need to understand it better." Mariah smiled gently. "That's all I ask.
I don't need a yes right away.
I just wanted to be honest and let you know my story. I'll wait." Over the next few days, Eli found himself paying more attention to Mariah. She helped with chores on the ranch, fixing fences alongside him, feeding the animals, and even cooking simple meals. She didn't just sit and wait. She became a part of the ranch life naturally, showing patience and kindness. Slowly, Eli began to understand her not just as a visitor or someone with a request, but as a person with strength, resilience, and warmth. He noticed small things about her: the way she laughed when a horse nuzzled her shoulder, the care she took in tending to the chickens, the way she spoke to him as an equal, not as someone to be guided or instructed. These little moments built trust between them. It wasn't a rush. It wasn't overwhelming. It was quiet, steady, and real. Eli began to feel a responsibility he had never imagined. It wasn't just about helping Mariah have a child. It was about being part of someone's life in a meaningful way, about being trusted and needed. For the first time in years, his life felt larger than his ranch. It felt connected, like he was no longer just a solitary man in the desert, but part of a story bigger than himself. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat on the porch together. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the wind carrying the scent of sage and earth. Mariah spoke softly about her hopes for the future, her dreams for a child, and the kind of life she wanted to build. Eli listened, feeling a mix of awe and respect. Her words were simple, but they carried meaning that Eli felt deep in his heart. "I know it won't be easy," she said, looking at him, "but I believe it can be done with someone I can trust, someone like you." Eli didn't know what the future held. He still had doubts, fears, and questions. But as he looked at her, he felt a quiet determination growing inside him. Maybe this was the moment when his life would change. Maybe it was time to step beyond the life he had known, to trust someone, and take a chance on something bigger than himself. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to her. "I'll do my best to understand, Mariah. That's all I can promise right now. But I want to try." Mariah smiled, a small, genuine smile that lit up her face. "That's all I need," she said. And in that quiet desert evening, as the stars began to appear one by one, Eli felt the first stirrings of a life that could be different, one filled with trust, connection, and the possibility of something he had never dared to imagine before. Over the next few weeks, Life on Eli's ranch began to feel different. The quiet rhythm of his days, once predictable and solitary, was now filled with small moments of connection. Mariah stayed nearby, helping with chores, cooking meals, and talking to him during breaks in their work. She didn't rush anything, and Eli didn't force himself to make any big decisions. Instead, they moved slowly, learning about each other as the days passed. At first, Eli had felt awkward around her. He had never spent so much time with another adult, especially someone who had come to him with such an unusual request. But as days turned into weeks, he realized that her presence didn't feel intrusive. It felt natural. She was careful, thoughtful, and patient. Her quiet laughter when a horse nudged her or when a chicken flapped its wings brought a lightness to the ranch he hadn't felt in years. One morning, Eli woke before sunrise to tend to the animals. He found Mariah already outside tending to the chickens and sweeping the yard. The cool desert air was crisp, and the sky was painted with shades of pink and gold. She looked up when he approached and smiled. "Good morning," she said. "I thought I'd get an early start before the sun gets too high." Eli nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he didn't quite understand. "Morning." "You're early. I like that." They worked in silence for a while, side by side, feeding the animals and checking the fences. There was a rhythm to their work, a quiet cooperation that didn't need words. But after a while, Mariah spoke, her voice soft but deliberate. "Ellie," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Why did you agree to at least listen to me?" she asked. Her eyes searched his, curious and sincere. Eli paused, unsure how to answer. He had spent so many years alone that he hadn't thought much about why he did anything for anyone else. But looking at her, he realized that it wasn't just about helping. It was about trust, honesty, and the quiet hope she had shown him.
"I don't know," he said finally.
"Maybe because you were brave enough to come here and speak your truth. I've lived alone for a long time, and no one's ever asked me for something like this. But you seemed sincere. I could see that you really meant it. And maybe I wanted to see if I could be part of something important, even if I don't fully understand it yet." Maria nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "I think that's all anyone can ask for," she said. As the days went by, Eli began to notice other things about Mariah. She was resourceful and practical. She knew how to tend the garden, repair fences, and even mend small equipment. She didn't just sit and wait for things to happen. She contributed to the ranch in meaningful ways. And yet, despite her skills and independence, there was a quiet vulnerability about her that made Eli feel protective. One afternoon, as they worked in the barn, Mariah paused and leaned against a beam. "Eli," she said quietly, "I know this is unusual, what I've asked. I don't want you to feel pressured. But I also want you to know that I've thought a lot about this. I want to be honest with you about what it means." Ellie set down the hammer he was using and turned to face her. "Go on," he said. Mariah took a deep breath. "I want a child, not just for myself, but because I want to build a life that has love, care, and stability. I've never had that. My family, they couldn't provide it. I don't want the same for a child. I want to give them a life filled with safety and love. I know it's a lot to ask of you. I know it's unconventional. But I also know that someone like you, someone steady, responsible, and kind, can help make it possible." Eli felt a lump in his throat. He had always been practical, thinking mostly about animals, land, and daily chores. But hearing her speak about life, love, and responsibility stirred something deep inside him. He had never imagined himself as someone who could be trusted in such a profound way. And yet, here she was, believing in him enough to ask. I don't know everything about this, he admitted. But I do know that I want to try to understand. I want to help if I can. Mariah's eyes softened. That's all I've ever wanted. Someone willing to listen, willing to understand. I don't need you to have all the answers. I just need honesty, and you've given me that. From that moment, their bond grew stronger. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, but it was deep, meaningful, and built on mutual respect and trust. They spent long afternoons talking about their lives, sharing stories from their past, and even laughing about small, unexpected moments on the ranch. Mariah told Eli about her childhood on the reservation, the difficulties she had faced, and the dreams she still held close. Eli shared his own memories of growing up, his love for the land, and the quiet joys of ranch life. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Mariah spoke softly. Eli, I know people might not understand what we're doing. They might judge us, question us. But I believe that if something is meant to be, it will work out. And I believe in us, what we're trying to do. Eli looked at her, the sky glowing behind her, and felt a sense of purpose he had never known. He realized that life didn't have to be solitary or predictable. Sometimes taking a chance, trusting someone, and opening your life to another person could create something beautiful and meaningful. The days turned into weeks, and the routine of the ranch became a shared life. Mariah helped with the work, but she also brought a sense of warmth and companionship that Eli had never experienced. They learned to rely on each other, to support one another, and to communicate openly about hopes, fears, and responsibilities. One day, Eli found himself sitting on the porch while Mariah tended the garden. He watched her work, her movements confident yet gentle, and he realized how much he had come to appreciate her presence. She had brought life and energy to his quiet world, and he felt a growing sense of commitment, not just to her, but to the dream they were nurturing together.
Eli? Mariah said suddenly, looking up from her work. Do you think it will be difficult?
This? All of it? Eli thought for a moment. I don't know, he admitted. I know it won't be simple.
There will be challenges, but I also know that we'll face them together.
And maybe that's what matters most.
Mariah smiled, a small, genuine smile that warmed the evening air.
I think so too, she said. And in those quiet moments on the ranch, with the wind rustling through the trees and the sun casting long shadows across the land, Eli began to understand something important. Life was unpredictable, and sometimes it brought people together in ways that seemed impossible at first. But when trust, honesty, and hope were at the center, even the most unexpected journeys could lead to something meaningful. He realized that Mariah's request, unusual as it had been, was more than just about having a child. It was about connection, courage, and the willingness to open one's heart. And for Eli, it was a lesson in life he hadn't expected to learn. That caring for someone, believing in someone, and supporting them in their dreams could bring purpose and fulfillment beyond anything he had known before. As night fell over the desert, Eli and Mariah sat together on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. The quiet of the night was different now, not lonely, but full of potential and possibility. They had no idea what the future would hold, but for the first time, Eli felt ready to face it, not alone, but with someone he trusted by his side. Life on the ranch had grown quieter in some ways, yet busier in others. Eli and Mariah had settled into a routine, working together from dawn to dusk. But as the weeks passed, it became clear that the world beyond the ranch would not be so simple or forgiving. Their unusual arrangement, though filled with honesty and trust, began to attract attention from both the nearby town and the reservation. People were curious, some judgmental, and some simply unsure how to react. One morning, as Eli was mending a fence near the edge of the property, he saw a neighbor approaching on horseback. It was Mr. Thompson, a man known for speaking his mind and rarely holding back. Eli waved, trying to mask the unease that had grown in his chest over the past few days. "Morning, Eli," Mr. Thompson called, stopping in front of the fence. "I hear you've got company."
Morning, yes. She's been helping me around the ranch.
Thompson's eyes narrowed. "Helping, huh? I hear she came asking for something personal. Is that true?"
Ellie took a deep breath.
He had expected questions, whispers, and maybe even criticism, but confronting it directly felt heavier than he imagined. "Yes," he said, carefully. "She came asking for my help. It's complicated, but I've been honest with her, and we've been working together to understand it. That's all I can say." Mr. Thompson frowned, but didn't press further.
Well, I hope you know what you're doing, Eli. People talk, and you don't want trouble. I'll wait.
He tipped his hat and rode off, leaving Eli staring at the dust kicked up by the horses' hooves. Eli felt a knot in his stomach. The ranch had always been a private place, a sanctuary from judgment or interference. But now their personal lives were becoming public, and he realized that their journey would be far from easy. He returned to the house, where Mariah was tending the garden, her hands deep in the soil. "Morning," she said, looking up with a smile that tried to hide her own concerns. "Everything all right?" Ellie shook his head slowly. "People are talking. Some of it is judgment. Some is just curiosity. I think we need to be prepared for questions, maybe even criticism." Mariah nodded, placing the trowel down. "I expected as much. It's unusual, yes, but it's also honest. I just hope people can see that we're doing this responsibly, with care and thought." Eli agreed, feeling a growing sense of responsibility. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about how they presented themselves, how they navigated a world that might not understand their choices. Over the next few days, they began making small preparations. Mariah visited the local clinic for a routine checkup and to discuss plans with the doctor. Eli accompanied her, learning about the medical care, the nutrition, and the responsibilities that came with helping someone bring a child into the world. It was overwhelming at first, the number of things to consider, the appointments, the physical care, the emotional readiness. But Eli took notes, asked questions, and tried to absorb as much as he could.
"Ellie, I know this isn't easy," Mariah said one afternoon as they walked back from the clinic, "but I wanted you to be involved."
"This is about both of us. It's about trust and responsibility, not just a simple favor." Eli nodded. "I know. I want to do this right. I want to be someone you can rely on, someone who helps you. But it's a lot to take in. I've never done anything like this before. I'm learning as I go." Mariah smiled, her eyes softening. "That's all I need. We'll figure it out together." Even as they worked to prepare, there were challenges beyond their control. Some people in town whispered behind their backs, while others openly questioned Mariah's decision. On the reservation, there were mixed reactions as well, some supportive, some doubtful. Mariah faced moments of doubt herself, wondering if they could really navigate such a path in a world that often judged unconventional choices harshly. One evening, as they sat by the fire in the living room, Mariah spoke quietly. "Eli, I worry sometimes. People don't understand. People, they think we're doing something wrong, or that we're being reckless. I know we're not, but it's hard not to feel their judgment."
Ellie reached over and took her hand. I know.
I feel it too, but we can't let it control us. We know the truth. We know we're acting with care, responsibility, and honesty. That's what matters. Mariah nodded, squeezing his hand. You're right. We just have to focus on what we can control and not worry about what others think. Our priority is the future, not opinions. As the weeks passed, the reality of their task became clearer. Mariah's body and health needed attention, meals had to be carefully prepared, and routines had to be adjusted to ensure safety and comfort. Eli learned to plan ahead, taking note of nutrition, rest, and emotional support. He realized that helping Mariah wasn't just about physical presence. It was about consistent care, understanding, and patience. Some days were easier than others. On quiet mornings, they worked together in harmony, feeding the animals, tending the garden, and repairing fences. On harder days, Mariah felt fatigued or emotional, and Eli had to step in, offering quiet support and reassurance. Each challenge they faced strengthened their connection, deepening trust and respect. One afternoon, Eli was out checking the cattle when a sudden storm rolled in from the west. Heavy rain and wind lashed across the ranch, and he rushed back to the house, worried for Mariah. She had already brought the animals inside and secured the garden, but the storm was fierce. Together, they worked to tie down equipment, bring loose items indoors, and calm the animals. By the time the storm passed, they were soaked, exhausted, but relieved. Sitting together by the fire that evening, Eli realized how much he had come to rely on her presence, not just as someone he was helping, but as a companion, a partner, in facing life's challenges. Mariah, too, realized how much she appreciated his calm, steady nature, his willingness to learn, and the quiet way he made her feel safe. Their life on the ranch had become a delicate balance between work, preparation, and the expectations of the outside world. Every day required patience, understanding, and care. And yet, in the midst of the challenges, there were moments of joy. A calf born in the pasture, a garden in bloom, or a quiet evening watching the stars. These moments reminded them why they were doing what they were doing, and why the effort was worth it. One evening, after a long day of chores, Eli and Mariah sat on the porch, sipping warm tea. The sky was filled with stars, and the desert night was calm and quiet. Mariah looked at Eli and spoke softly.
Ellie, I know it's been hard.
There have been moments of doubt, challenges we didn't expect, and judgments from others. But I also see how strong we've become. I see how much we can handle together, and I know that what we're trying to do, it's possible because of you. Mariah, you've taught me more than I ever expected to learn. You've shown me what it means to trust, to care, and to be part of something bigger than myself. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that together we can face it. Mariah smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder.
We'll face it, Eli, one day at a time, one step at a time.
That's all anyone can do. As they sat together in the quiet night, Eli realized that the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be obstacles, judgments, and moments of doubt, but there would also be connection, growth, and the possibility of creating something meaningful and lasting. He knew that the road would be long, but he also knew that with Mariah by his side, they could face whatever came their way. For the first time, Eli understood that life wasn't just about solitude or routine. Life was about trust, responsibility, and the courage to take a chance on something greater than oneself. And as the stars shone brightly above the desert, he felt ready to face the challenges, ready to support Mariah, and ready to build a life that neither of them could have imagined alone. Months passed, and the days on the ranch became a steady rhythm of care, preparation, and quiet anticipation. Eli and Mariah had grown even closer over time. The ranch, once a place of solitude for Eli, now felt alive with purpose and hope. Every morning they worked together, feeding animals, tending the garden, and preparing meals. Every evening they sat on the porch, talking about the future, sharing dreams, and planning for the arrival of the child they both longed for. Mariah's visits to the clinic continued regularly. The doctor guided them patiently, explaining the steps needed to ensure a healthy pregnancy. Eli learned about nutrition, rest, and emotional care, absorbing every detail and asking questions when he was unsure. He took the role seriously, determined to provide the best support he could. With every lesson, he grew more confident in his ability to help Mariah. Despite the preparation and care, there were still moments of doubt. Mariah sometimes worried whether the plan would truly work, whether the community would understand, or whether life would become more difficult than they had imagined. Eli, too, felt a quiet tension at times. He had always been practical, used to dealing with tasks he could control, like fixing fences or tending livestock. But this, helping bring a new life into the world, was beyond anything he had ever faced. It required patience, resilience, and trust in both Mariah and himself. One crisp morning, Ellie found Mariah sitting near the garden, her hands resting on her small bag. She looked thoughtful, as though carrying the weight of weeks of anticipation and preparation. "Morning," Eli said softly, not wanting to startle her. Mariah looked up and smiled faintly. "Morning. I was just thinking about everything that's come before this moment." Eli sat beside her, offering silent support. "It's been a long journey," he said, "but we've made it this far. We've faced challenges, and we've learned from them. We can do this." Mariah nodded, taking a deep breath. "I hope so. I really do." In the weeks that followed, the routine became even more careful and deliberate. They adjusted meals for better nutrition, organized the ranch for safety and convenience, and continued their conversations about the life they wanted to build for the child. Every small task, every shared moment, strengthened their bond. It wasn't a rush to the finish line. It was a slow, deliberate journey, filled with trust and responsibility. Then, one late summer evening, as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, Mariah felt the first real signs that the time was near. Her hand rested on her belly, and Eli noticed the change immediately. His heart raced with a mix of excitement, nervousness, and awe. They had talked about this moment for months, but now that it was approaching, it felt both miraculous and overwhelming.
"We're almost there," Mariah whispered, her voice filled with quiet wonder.
Eli nodded, his gaze steady and reassuring. "We'll be ready. Don't worry. I'll be here with you every step of the way." The following days were filled with preparation and anticipation. Eli made sure the ranch was secure, cleaned the house carefully, and stocked up on supplies suggested by the clinic. Mariah rested as much as possible, following every guideline and recommendation. They faced the days with a mixture of excitement and careful planning, knowing that patience and attention were the keys to success. Finally, one calm night, Mariah felt the first contractions. Eli was right beside her, holding her hand, guiding her calmly and keeping her spirits high. The quiet desert night was filled with the sounds of preparation, careful movement, and whispered words of encouragement. Ellie had learned how to stay calm under pressure, and his steady presence brought Mariah reassurance she desperately needed. Hours passed, and through the night they worked together. The ranch, the desert, and the stars above seemed to watch silently as they navigated this delicate, life-changing moment. Eli's confidence grew with every passing hour, and Mariah drew strength from his calm presence and unwavering support. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, their journey reached its most precious moment. A child was born, healthy and strong. Eli held the tiny, perfect baby in his hands, feeling a surge of love, awe, and responsibility. The child's soft cries filled the room, a sound that brought tears to both Eli and Mariah. It was the culmination of months of planning, preparation, and shared courage. Mariah rested against Eli, exhausted but smiling. "We did it," she whispered, her eyes shining with joy. Ellie nodded, unable to speak at first, overwhelmed by emotion. "Yes," he said finally, "we did it. We brought life into this world together." In the days that followed, the ranch was filled with a new kind of energy. The baby's presence transformed their quiet routines into moments of care, learning, and connection. Eli learned how to change diapers, soothe cries, and care for a newborn, often clumsily at first, but always with patience and love. Mariah rested and recovered, grateful for his steady presence, the support that made her feel safe and capable. Neighbors and townspeople, curious at first, gradually saw the care and dedication Eli and Mariah showed. Slowly, judgment gave way to respect. People began to recognize the sincerity of their actions, the thoughtfulness, the responsibility, and the deep bond they shared. Even those who had doubted their plan began to acknowledge the love and dedication that made their arrangement meaningful and wholesome. As weeks turned into months, Eli and Mariah adapted to life with the child. Their routines shifted, but the shared responsibility brought them closer together. They discovered the small joys in feeding the baby, watching the first smile, and hearing the first laugh. The ranch, once a quiet place of solitude, now felt alive with warmth, hope, and purpose. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Mariah sat on the porch, the baby cradled gently in her arms. Eli joined her, sitting close, and together they watched the sky fill with stars. "I never imagined life could be like this," Mariah said softly. "I always wanted a child, but I didn't know it could feel so complete. I'm grateful to you, Eli. You made this possible." Eli looked at her, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never known. "We did this together. You dreamed it, and I helped." "Ah, but the courage, the honesty, the care, you brought all of that. I'm just grateful to be part of it." They sat in silence for a while, watching the baby sleep, listening to the gentle rustle of the wind through the desert. The stars shone brightly above, and the quiet of the night felt like a gentle promise of the future. Eli realized in that moment that life wasn't just about solitude or routine. It was about trust, courage, and connection. It was about opening one's heart to someone else, believing in them, and sharing responsibility in the most meaningful way possible. Mariah had come to his door with a request, but she had given him something far greater in return: the chance to be part of a life, to care deeply, and to experience the joy of family in the most unexpected way. As the desert night stretched on, Eli and Mariah made a silent promise to each other and to the child they now shared. They would face the future together with patience, love, and determination. They would protect, nurture, and guide this new life, just as they had supported each other through the months of preparation, challenge, and trust. And in that quiet, starlit desert, they understood that family was not always about tradition or expectation. It was about love, responsibility, and the courage to take a chance on something bigger than oneself. Together, they had created life, hope, and a new beginning that neither of them could have imagined alone. The ranch, once a place of solitude, now held laughter, cries of joy, and the gentle rhythm of a new life. And as the stars shone brightly above, Eli, Mariah, and their child faced the future with hearts full of hope, love, and promise.